I stopped chasing, and I was rejected with dignity. It was as if, with every breath I took, someone squeezed my chest even tighter from the inside. There was no scream, no argument, no clear ending, just an all-too-present absence. The pain of trying to be seen, heard, chosen, and never being so. The sound of a notification that never arrived. The silence of a wait that becomes routine. It's the kind of pain nobody sees. The pain of running after someone who never even looked back. Of insisting on crumbs, as if a little attention could make up for the hunger to be fully embraced. And what hurts most, sometimes, isn't the no. It's the maybe. The who knows, the it's not quite like that. This is what traps you, what trains hope, what exhausts you. And in this exhaustion, a silent question arises. How long will you run for someone who never took a step in your direction? Seneca said that true freedom begins when we stop being hostage to others' desire. And I understood this the day I stopped begging for presents. The day I realized that begging for affection wasn't proof of love. It was a sign of self-forgetfulness, that continuing to insist on closed doors, hoping a stronger knock would convince someone to open, only prolongs the pain of not being welcome. Marcus Aurelius wrote that dignity doesn't depend on others, that even in rejection, it's possible to maintain what's yours inside. And that day, I chose to stop. Not because I stopped feeling, but because I started to see myself, to hear myself, to listen to myself. In silence. It hurts to stop. It hurts a lot. It hurts more than running, but it's a different kind of pain, a pain that reveals, that shows what was always there, covered by the anxiety of being loved. And in this pain, something strange is born, something like a thread of dignity, something like a candle that learns to burn alone in the dark, without an audience, without return, without the promise of being seen, just burn in silence. And perhaps that's how you begin to rediscover yourself, when you accept that there is value in not begging, that there is beauty in simply existing, even without being chosen. This is a story about that silence, about that end that didn't come with words but with their absence. A real story, because maybe it's yours too, running after someone who walks away. There was something cruel about that silent effort. That sequence of messages that were never answered with the same interest. Those attempts at meetings always postponed. Those conversations you sustained almost alone, as if loving was a monologue, as if presence was your debt. And you paid. You paid with attention. You paid with time. You paid with your own self-esteem, but it wasn't enough. It never was, because the other person didn't distance themselves. The other person was never truly there. And this absence disguised as presence is perhaps the most violent form of rejection. Your mind said it was just a fade, that maybe he was busy, that maybe she was confused. Your heart tried to justify every delay, every silence, every absence, as if finding excuses for neglect was easier than facing abandonment, as if saying he doesn't love me was more painful than continuing to wait. The truth, however, was simple and sharp. You were running after someone who was already walking away, and no matter how fast you ran, they would never see you because they never looked. This type of rejection is invisible. No one sees it because technically you still talk. It hasn't ended. He never said he didn't want you, but you feel it. You feel it in the lack of reciprocity, in the emptiness after every encounter, in the exhaustion that comes after every attempt at connection. And this slowly corrodes you. It extinguishes your light. It makes you doubt if you are worthy of being loved, when in fact your mistake was never wanting too much. The mistake was accepting too little. It was running for someone who never sought you. It's not weakness to want to be seen. It's not neediness to desire presence. Human, deeply human. But there's a limit between loving and losing yourself. And sometimes stopping the chase isn't giving up. It's finally realizing that the race was always yours alone, the trap of trained hope. There was a time of day that hurt more. For some, it was waking up. For others, in the silence of the night. But almost always, it was in the interval between maybe and never, between the last unanswered message and the notification that never arrived, a specific, cruel, punctual emptiness. Waiting became a habit, waiting for something that, deep down, you already knew wouldn't come. A call, an invitation, a minimal gesture of care. Hope became routine, but a tired hope trained. Like a dog that sits whenever it hears a maybe. You learned to wait. You learned that his silence could just be his way, that her lack of attention was a fade. You learned that insisting was a form of love, that if you held on a little longer, maybe you'd be rewarded, maybe you'd be chosen, maybe this time it would be enough. And so you waited, and you negated yourself, and you molded yourself, and you diminished yourself, as if love were something to be conquered through merit, as if just doing everything right would finally bring what was always base, present, interest, affection. But true affection doesn't demand continuous sacrifice. It embraces. It arrives without you needing to hurt yourself to receive it. The problem is, when we get used to crumb, we start to believe that's all we're worth, that maybe that's the only way the other will stay, and that's when the emptiness sets in, because even when they show up, you still feel alone. Even when they respond, you still feel ignored, because the absence isn't physical, it's emotional, and no occasional presence can heal constant abandonment. Seneca said that time is the most precious asset, and when you spend that time waiting for someone who never knew what to do with you, you are silently betraying yourself. You are exchanging your peace for unspoken promise. You are postponing your life for a love that never fully arrived, and perhaps never will. Because those who truly want to be there are, without being called, without you having to chase, without needing to prove yourself. The breaking point isn't a scream, it's exhaustion. There was no fight, no scream, no farewell. It was just another ordinary day. Something inside you stopped. A different silence settled. Not the silence of waiting, nor of doubt. It was a silence of an end. An emptiness that no longer hurt as before, but also didn't heal. It was as if your body had decided for you. As if, without fanfare, without drama, it said enough, because there's a limit that doesn't scream, it just gets tired. And exhaustion sometimes is stronger than any word. You didn't decide to stop because you stopped loving. You stopped because you understood deep in your chest that loving alone isn't love. It's exhaustion, and you were exhausted. Exhausted from thinking 1,000 times before sending a message, from trying to seem lighthearted when you were shattered inside, from making excuses for the other's absence, from making plans with someone who never confirmed their presence, from holding onto the promise of a bond that never truly materialized, all by yourself. It was there, in that unprecedented silence, that you saw yourself clearly. The moment of rupture is almost never cinematic. It's subtle, almost invisible. It's when you realize you've stopped waiting. That for the first time, you didn't check your phone right after waking up. That you didn't write that text that would never get a reply. That you didn't cry remembering the last encounter, not because you'd moved on, but because, at last, you accept. The love you offered was too big to fit someone who only knew how to receive, never reciprocate. Epictetus said that true freedom arises when we learn to distinguish what is under our control from what is not. And at that moment, you stop chasing, not out of weakness, but out of lucidity, because you realize the other person wasn't your responsibility, that their absence wasn't a reflection of your worth, that your effort couldn't fill the void of someone who never wanted to be fully there. And in that exhaustion, your strength was born, the strength to stop, the strength to no longer insist, the strength to carry on, alone, yes, but at peace. Seneca and the dignified departure. There was something profoundly silent in the act of leaving without a fuss, without accusation, without dramatic goodbye, without long explanations trying to justify one's own worth. Just a gesture, a step back, a deeper breath, a whispered no among thoughts that once screamed for attention. That's what happened. There was no audience, no warning, just an internal decision. Calm and firm, the kind of decision no one applauds, but which changes everything inside. That's when you understood what Seneca meant. It's a sign of wisdom to leave what diminishes us, even if it hurt. It wasn't easy. It isn't. Because leaving, in this case, isn't exiting a place. It's exiting a role. The role of someone who always tried, who always understands, who endures the unbearable in the hope of a returning gesture. You stopped being that person, not because you hardened, but because you saw yourself, because you realized you were too bent, too small, too silent, and you understood that dignity isn't wounded pride. It's self-respect, standing tall. It's when you choose yourself, even with a heavy heart. Dignity in this context doesn't come from the other. It comes from the way you refuse to seek revenge, to dramatize, to debase yourself. It comes from the silence with which you withdraw, from the calm that arises when you decide not to lose yourself trying to prove yourself. Because it's not about winning. It's about not betraying yourself, not forgetting yourself, not letting the other's lack of love contaminate what is most integral in you. Marcus Aurelius wrote that dignity is a cloak no one can tear off. Only you can cast it aside. And now you've chosen to wear that cloak again. This serene and firm act of leaving is more than an end. It's a new beginning. Not a happy, light, magical new beginning, but an honest new beginning with yourself, without mask, without excuses, with pain, yeah, but with truth. And this silent truth has immense power, the power to rebuild you from within, not as someone wounded, but as someone who survived abandonment without having to abandon themselves. The metaphor of the open gate. Imagine a gate, not just any gate, but one you have to bang on fiercely, repeatedly, waiting in the rain, begging for a sign of it opening. And even when it opens for a brief moment, it's as if it says, come in, careful, don't get too comfortable, don't stay too long. This metaphor isn't just about physical doors, it's about relationship, about human connections that demand more effort than reciprocity. And for a long time, perhaps you believed that this was the right path, the right love, that true love demanded proof, demanded pain, demanded resilience. But what if it isn't like that? What if true love doesn't demand wounded fingers? What if, when it's real, the door is simply ajar, inviting, welcoming, without fanfare, without imposition, without the need to justify yourself constant? Because those who want you to enter don't complicate things. They don't run away. They don't hide behind emotional tests. They don't make you bleed only to offer a poorly applied bandage later. The love that embraces with a simple gesture, in calm silence, in constant presence, without needing to show. You spent too long knocking on the wrong gates of people who only opened when they wanted to. People who confused availability with weakness, who used your affection as an advantage, who liked to be wanted but didn't know how to want back, and for a long time, you believed that's just how it was. That love was a conquest. That connection was persistent. But now, perhaps first time, you're starting to understand that it's not. That love isn't war. That affection isn't a test. That presence isn't a bargaining chip. Seneca reminds us that the most precious good isn't what we give to others, but what we preserve within ourselves. And by stopping banging on that gate, you're not giving up on love. You're making space for something new, something lighter, something that doesn't demand cuts to exist. A love that sees you even before you knock. A love that doesn't ask for explanations to let you in. A love that, like an already open gate, is simply there, waiting quietly, firmly, ready to embrace those who arrive whole, not those who arrive in peace. Being left can be the beginning of being found again by yourself. Rejection has its own sound. It's not the sound of a slamming door, nor of someone saying goodbye. It's more like an echo that repeats day after day what was not said, what was not felt back, and this echo stays inside us. It fills the empty spaces with doubt, with guilt, with that insistent question, what was I lacking to be chosen? But the truth is, often, nothing is lacking. There's just an excess of giving where there's no reciprocity. And the pain of being left isn't just about the others absent. It's about the loss of the image you built of yourself beside them, the image of someone who perhaps believed too much. Epictetus said, it's not what happens to us, but how we react to what happens to us. And at this instant, the turning point begins. Because being left can be devastating, but it can also be a portal, a cut that, instead of destroying, it reveals where you placed your worth. It reveals that perhaps you measured your importance by the reflection in eyes that never fully saw you. And this revelation doesn't come with anger. It comes with a lucid sadness, a pain that finally teaches. It teaches that self-love begins where the illusion of needing to be chosen to exist ends. Seneca would add, he who knows himself does not sell himself for crumbs. And this phrase, which seems harsh, is actually an embrace, a reminder that your story neither begins nor ends with whoever left. It continues. It restarts with more silence, with more care, with more truth. And this reunion with yourself isn't immediate. It's not easy, but it's profound. It begins the day you stop trying to prove yourself to someone who never saw you. The day you no longer need to explain yourself. The day when silence, which once hurt, begins to make sense. Reconstruction doesn't come with applause, nor with guarantee. It comes with small daily decisions, like choosing to sleep without waiting for that mess, like deciding not to respond to what once trapped you, like looking in the mirror and gradually recognizing someone who is returning. Not the same person as before, but someone more whole, someone calmer, someone who learned that however much love hurts, it doesn't have to be pain, and that dignity, that forgotten word, is the bridge between the wound and peace. If today you feel rejected, don't run, don't beg, just breathe. Listen to the echo for a moment, then listen to the silence, and then listen to yourself. Perhaps that's where the true reunion begins, the only one that will never leave you again, because this time, it's with you and for you. Epilogue, the silence that liberates. Some stories don't have an end. They simply dissolve over time, like a memory that slowly stops hurting. Not because it was forgotten, but because it was understood. And when pain finds meaning, its name changes. It stops being an open wound and becomes a scar. It stops being absence and becomes space. It stops being lost and transforms into freedom. This is what happens when we stop chasing. When, instead of looking for someone who never stayed, we decide to stay with what's left of ourselves. And we begin to rebuild, not to impress, not to prove anything, just to exist with more wholeness. There is a kind of peace that only comes after exhaustion, when there is no more energy to insist, when there are no more fantasies that it could be different. It's on this raw ground, in this honest emptiness, that Stoicism finds refuge, because it doesn't promise happy ending, it doesn't offer shortcut. It merely teaches that everything you need is already here, within your control, in your breath, in your ability to remain serene, even when the world around you makes no sense. And this serenity is not coldness, it is present, it is emotional maturity. What was once a chase became silent. What was once despair became a pause. And now, when you remember everything you lived through, it might still hurt, but it hurts different. It hurts with dignity, because now you know that loving is not dragging yourself, that waiting is not forgetting yourself, that wanting someone cannot cost your peace, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is to leave. It is to refuse less than you deserve. It is to stop begging for emotional crumbs, because what you offer presence, listening, affection is worth a lot. And whoever doesn't recognize that doesn't deserve you, not out of arrogance, but out of justice. So, if today there is still silence within you, listen carefully, not as someone waiting for an answer from another, but as someone beginning to listen, perhaps for the first time, to their own voice, the one that was muffled for so long, the one that whispers, I need myself too. This is the real turning point, not the one that changes others, but the one that changes your way of staying with yourself. And if pain still remained, remember, it is also part of healing, because only those who are still alive can feel. And being alive now means one simple and powerful thing. You have returned home within yourself, and here no one can ever leave you again.